Well, here we are. It's October 2017 at Blue Collar Bobbers, and it's time to do these 1100 Shadow Hondas. This is the Aero model. So let's go ahead and do this conversion on this bike. It's a good looking bike, but it just needs to be bobbed out. It just looks like a family sedan. So let's turn it into a little sports car. Okay, so go ahead and grab a floor jack. We'll need that to jack up the bike. We won't be jacking it up as much as just raising it up enough to get the tension off the rear shocks, so we can take those off to remove the rear fender supports. And then also grab a roller around chair, like our Goodyear racing chair there. It just makes the job so much more fun if you have a chair to roll around on instead of kneeling over. So go ahead and grab those items and let's get started. Okay, do me a favor, and before we get started on this bike, let's go ahead and tie up our kickstand. You can use a piece of rope or a heavy bungee cord or whatever, but let's just tie this kickstand so that it can't fold. And then that way, if you're working on the bike and it rolls forward, it won't come off the kickstand and fall. So do that before we get started. It's a nice little safety feature. I just wrapped it around the kickstand and around the foot peg here. Before we remove the fender, we'll have to take the seat off the bike. I'm sure you've probably done this before, but let me show you how it's done. There's just 3 screws. There's one here, and one in the back right here. Take those 3 screws out, and the seat comes right off. This is the wire that goes to the tail light and signal lights in the back. If you trace this forward, it goes under this bar, and it ends up going inside this like rubber boot looking thing here. You'll have to kind of pull the wires around and stuff to locate that. I'm going to go ahead and cut that rubber boot off so we can see the wires underneath, because we're going to have to disconnect all these wires. I've exposed these wires, and they're the single connectors. There's an orange, a light blue, a brown, a solid green, and a green with a yellow stripe. There should be those wires, and we need to unplug those. Now they can be a little bit stubborn, so when you grab hold of the wires, hold on to the plastic housing here and this plastic, and kind of twist them around and kind of keep working with them. They'll come apart. Sometimes they're a little bit stiff. So I've unplugged all these ahead of time, and there they are. That's what they look like. And then what we want to do, we want to feed these wires back under this bar here. So when we pull the fender off, the wires will come out with the fender. So pull those out like that. And then when we pull the fender off, the wires will come with it. I've put some boxes under the rear fender right here. That's so it kind of support it. So as I take the 3 bolts out of each side of the support there, the fender will drop, and you may not want to have that fender drop and damage it in case you want to sell it or something. So anyway, go ahead and remove those 3 screws on each side. 1, 2, 3. And then the fender will drop, and I'll go ahead and take it off for you. And there you have it. We're going to remove those chrome strips next. Okay, we're going to save the wire from the inside of the fender here, so go ahead and cut it right there. And then I'm going to bend those keepers up, and I'm going to pull the wire out of the front. And I'll just pull that out. And then we're going to keep this wire. It's the one that has the ends on it. We've got to get these bullet covers off these shocks in order to remove the shock. So just go ahead and take that big Phillips screw out of the top and remove the cover. And do that on both sides, and then we can take these shocks off. Now I've put my jack under the muffler support in the back there. You want it kind of back toward the rear wheel, so as you lift the bike up a little bit, it'll raise the rear of the bike and not the front. So we're going to do that. We're going to raise it up just a tad so we can get that shock off there. With the jack under the frame there, let's go ahead and raise the bike up just a little bit. We want to get rid of the tension on these two screws here, so remove those two screws, and hopefully the shock will just pull off. But this one was a little tough. It was a little bit dry, and kind of the bushings were kind of rotted away a little bit here. In fact, I think I'll order some new bushings. You can just get them from the dealer, or just go on any Honda motorcycle OEM parts supplier, and they sell these little rubber bushings. Okay, so I'm going to pry this off. Okay, it was a little bit of work, but we got her off there. Now we need to get this big bolt out of here. So what I'm going to use is my 15/16 socket, and I can slide it almost all the way on the square drive on the socket, but not quite all the way to get it over the bolt, because otherwise it'll be too short. So we can use that, or we could use a 24mm socket would be best, or a 24mm box end, or 15/16 box end, either one, or last resort, you could use a crescent wrench. Just make sure if you use a crescent wrench, make sure you keep it really tight, because you don't want to screw up the hex on this bolt. And make sure you push down when you take the bolt out. That way you're not moving the motorcycle around. I loosened that ahead of time with my socket. So we'll go ahead and take that bolt out, and we'll be back. Now that chrome strip on this is gone, so we're going to go ahead and put the bolt back in. Now it's really important on this bolt. We're going to use 2 of the 4 spacers that we give you in the kit. We give you 4 of these thick spacer washers. We're going to use 2 on each side, so 1 and 2. That's to replicate the thickness of the chrome strip that we took off. So go ahead and screw that back in there. And tighten that up, and then we can put the shock back on this side. I made sure that I sprayed like Windex or some slippery like soap on these bushings here and there, on the top and the bottom. And then make sure that the label is out on this side like the other, that matches the other side. And then go ahead and slide your shock on. You may have to pry it a little bit and help it to get it go on there, but it should slide on. Then tighten your bolts, top and bottom, and then install your cap. And then we'll do the other side. Go ahead and do the other side exactly the same way that you did this side, using the floor jack. And the only really difference is the bottom bolt will be a little bit different on the other side. But you're basically going to do the same thing. Just remove the chrome strip on the other side, doing it the same process as this side. And that should be it. We should be ready to go on to our next step. Oh, one final note about the floor jack too. Most floor jacks bleed off the pressure with time, so whatever you do, make sure you don't leave the bike without the shock on, without the shocks on both sides, because if you do, it could sag and fall off the stand, tip over, so just be careful about that.